I've been building my own kingdom for everyone to see. It exists to keep me safe from harm, and it's intact to glorify me. Nobody helped me build this up. It was me and me alone. I've appointed myself as the king, and I've given myself the throne. But it turns out I'm no ruler, and I have no control. So I have decided to destroy it all. I'm tearing down the walls, kicking down the doors. Everything inside this kingdom is yours. 'Cause what I've made is worthless, and it cannot stand. Come and breathe some life into my empty, cold, dead end. Down with the fickle king, away with this fantasy. You are the one I need. Death to the kingdom of me. Death to the kingdom of me. I should probably be frightened. This empire's all I know, but it always does more damage than good. I'm afraid it's gotta go. I know that I can't be trusted, 'cause I'm just a man. And if you hadn't given your life for me, a loser would be all that I am. You know they say just follow your heart. I'm afraid that's a load of trash. Your heart will take you down to deep, dark places where you feel like you'll never come back. So I'm coming out of the dark. This facade is... I woke up feeling like it was time to tighten up. Yeah, I woke up feeling like it might be a good day to get it done. That's right. Oh, the stadium is just like my second house. Now I'm two-tone talking, they can't shut my mouth. I woke up feeling like it was time to tighten up. Yeah, 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 yeah. I woke up feeling like it was time to tighten up.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. The off-season has begun, hasn't it? The off-season has begun. Welcome to episode 139 of the Two-Tone Talk by God pod on a snow day. I'll tell you what, I don't know where you're watching from, but where I'm at here in the South, where we don't get much snow, we got a good little bit of snow overnight. We've been out in the yard this morning enjoying the snow. It's a good distraction from the garbage that we have been subjected to as fans of the Tennessee Titans. You know, does it not seem like the Tennessee Titans off seasons are almost more eventful than the actual season? You know what I'm saying? Like, the season was awful. for really the last 3 years. Like, losing, awful, brutal, tough to watch. And then the offseason rolls around and it's like, oh, I can wake up now. It's like we're going to fire a bunch of people and we're going to hit the reset button. And at least it's more intriguing. But unfortunately, those chaotic, eventful off seasons are a big part of the reason why we keep seeing these painful football seasons. So the Titans are looking for a new GM. And does it not feel like to anybody else, it's just confusion. It's total confusion for the fans. It's total confusion as to what is even going on within the organization. I mean, we can't even answer the question, what is a GM and what is the role of a GM? Like, on the surface, you would think, like, the GM, that's the person who assembles talent. That's the person who heads up the draft. That's the person who decides what free agents to sign. That's the person who the head coach reports to, who makes the decisions about the roster and the cap and all of that stuff. But when it comes to the Tennessee Titans, who even knows? Who even knows what the GM is? Who even knows what the GM does? What's the job description of the GM of the Tennessee Titans? Who knows? Nobody knows. Who's going to be making the decisions? Who's been making the decisions? I don't know. Chad Brinker, it would appear, is the guy in charge. I mean, you got to give it to this guy. He was initially hired a couple of years ago to be a mediator between Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon. He was supposed to be a mediator, and now he's the only one left. He's gone from mediator to running the show. He's gone from mediator to president of football operations just within 2 years. Like, good for him. I mean, good for you, bro. If anything else, you know how to climb the ladder. You know how to climb the corporate ladder. You went from being a mediator for two dudes to within 2 years, those two dudes are gone and you're running everything. Kudos to you, Chad Brinker, for that. But is this the Chad Brinker show? Is this the Brinker era? Is Chad Brinker going to be the one deciding who we draft and what free agents we pick up and who plays quarterback and who we bring in? Like, is Chad Brinker going to be deciding that? Has Chad Brinker been deciding that all along? There's just some questions. I get the stories that are out there. Rand Carthon wasn't dedicated enough. He wasn't a hard enough worker. He didn't take the job seriously enough. Like, I get that's all out there. And honestly, we're probably never going to know the true validity of those statements because it's all he said, she said stuff. I do agree with certain people who say it's kind of cowardly to wait until the guy gets fired to then come out and make all of these, suggestions that he wasn't hardworking enough, this stuff that you had accumulated over the years of things you didn't like about him that you held on to till he got fired, and now you want to say it anonymously. I agree. That is cowardly, but, like, here's the thing. If Rand Carthon was not a hard enough worker, if he wasn't dedicated enough to the job, did we not know that at the end of year one? Because we gave him an extension a year ago at this time. Amy Adams Strunk fired Mike Vrabel, put out a statement that essentially said we're putting the future of the organization in Rand Carthon's hands, and we're giving him a 4-year extension. And now a year later, he's not a hard enough worker. He's not dedicated enough. He doesn't take the job seriously enough. Chad Brinker's pretty much the one doing everything. Like, if that's the case, did we not know that a year ago? Did we not know that 1 year ago at this time? I just don't get it. I don't get it. Did Chad Brinker come in with the expectation of, hey, I'm gonna try to take this thing over? Or did he have to do that because Rand wasn't doing a good enough job? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. Why we extended him and then fired him a year later. Why we said we were giving him the keys to the car and then fired him a year later. And there has been some questions brought up of what exactly did Amy Adams Strunk expect this season to be? Now, obviously, the Titans made a lot of moves last offseason that I know for me and for a lot of us as fans, we definitely were excited coming into this season. We were excited because we thought the Titans might surprise some people, maybe be a little better. I know the general idea about the Titans was, well, they're in a rebuild. They're probably going to be terrible this year. They're probably not going to win a lot of games. They're in a rebuild. They're trying to get things going. But hold on. If you're in a rebuild, why are you paying Calvin Ridley $92 million? Like, that just doesn't seem like something you would do if you were in a rebuild. Why are you making that big trade for L'Jarius Sneed? That doesn't seem like something you would do if you were in a rebuild and didn't expect to be totally in the playoff hunt or whatever this season. They made moves. See, it feels like the Tennessee Titans, this is what when people say they don't have a clear vision, it feels like they've been talking out of both sides of their mouth, because on one side they're saying, oh, we're rebuilding. We know it's going to take time. We've got to be patient. But then on the other side, they're saying sign Calvin Ridley to a $92 million deal. Trade for L'Jarius Sneed. Bring in Cheeto Awuzie. Bring in Lloyd Cushenberry. Go sign Tony Pollard. Go do all of this stuff. And it's like, okay, like you want to put Will Levis in a position to succeed going into this season. I get you need to do some things to see what you've got with him and give him a fair shot, but it just feels like the Titans have been talking out of both sides of their mouth. Are we rebuilding or are we trying to win now? Because some of the moves you made this past offseason would indicate that maybe you didn't think you were going to win a Super Bowl this year, but you were planning on being competitive. And I don't know if Rand Carthon sold Amy Adams Strunk a narrative that wasn't true. I don't know if Rand Carthon told her, like, hey, we're going to be competitive this year. And we're going to make the playoffs, or we're going to win the AFC. I don't know if he sold her that. And so she was especially mad because that didn't even come close to happening. And another thing that I want to know, I mean, listen, a lot of this is all because of Will Levis. Will Levis, when your quarterback, I've said this week, when your quarterback is not playing well, when your quarterback is playing so poorly that it hurts the team, somebody, like, that's the kind of stuff that gets people fired. And I understand that. And so my question is, and this is a question we have not been able to answer at any point over the last 2 years, who was responsible for trading up and drafting Will Levis in the second round of the 2023 NFL draft? Who was responsible for that? Because we've never been able to figure out who to blame. The firing of Rand Carthon would insinuate that it was all Rand's idea to get Will Levis, but then there's rumors that Vrabel wanted it. Then there were some rumors that Amy Adams Strunk was the one. We have no idea who to even blame for drafting Will Levis. We have no idea who to blame for anything. We have no clue. And it's not going to get any better, because the next time something goes wrong, we're going to say, okay, so do we blame Chad Brinker? Do we blame the new GM? Who knows? Who knows? It's just, the fans deserve better than to be left in the dark and not even know what the heck's going on. So who's going to decide who we draft next? Because we have the number one pick in the draft. We have the number one pick in the draft, and our front office is an absolute shambles. What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? The front office has no idea what they're doing, and we have the number one pick in the draft. Now, we got a long way to go till April when the draft happens. I know we're intrigued by Shedeur Sanders. I know we're intrigued by Cam Ward, the quarterbacks. We're intrigued by the idea. And I have said in the past, if you like those guys, you go draft those guys. If you get to April and you like Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, go right ahead. But I'm just telling you what. if anybody watched Abdul Carter play for Penn State last night, I know Penn State lost, but Abdul Carter, edge rusher. Titans desperately need edge rushers. That guy'd be tough to pass on, bro. That guy'd be tough to. If you are not absolutely sold on Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, I mean, Abdul Carter looks like a really solid player, and you draft him and get a bridge quarterback, and then the 2026 draft looks like a better quarterback class. I don't know, man. It'd be hard to pass up on Abdul Carter. We got plenty of time to talk about the draft, and we'll get to it. But, man, I wouldn't have a problem with that if that's what we decided to do. But we got to figure out who the GM is first, and then we got to find out what the GM of the Titans even does. We don't even know. Reggie McKenzie has emerged as a supposed frontrunner. And I said this on X, and this might seem a little dark, but if you hire Reggie McKenzie to be the general manager of the Tennessee Titans, you would be better off to take the whole fan base to the tallest building you can find and throw us off the side of it. If you hire Reggie McKenzie to be the general manager of the Tennessee Titans, I'll just go ahead and tell you right now. I mean, now, granted, I don't know who the heck is even going to want to take this job. Reggie McKenzie may be your only option, but no, we cannot hire Reggie McKenzie to be the general manager of the Titans. I mean, just come on. After all that's happened, 3-14, our quarterback didn't work out, our head coach looks incompetent, we fired the GM and only the GM, and nobody really knows why. Mike Keith has decided to leave to go to Knoxville to call games for the University of Tennessee, and then you hire Reggie McKenzie as the general manager. That just, I tell you what, I might fall out on the floor. Reggie McKenzie was the GM for the Raiders. Did some things for the Raiders, and look at some of his drafts. Very John Robinson-like, okay? Very John Robinson-like. It would seem to me, and I'm not going to pretend to be as knowledgeable about general managers as I am about, say, if it was a head coach, but it would seem as though Terrence Gray, Mike Borgonzi, and Ian Cunningham seem to be, from what I can tell, the fan favorites of people that fans would like to see get the job. Terrence Gray from Buffalo, Mike Borgonzi from Kansas City, or Ian Cunningham from Chicago. Ian Cunningham, who was in the running to be the GM 2 years ago when we hired Rand Carthon, and we ended up going with Rand, who maybe we should have gone with Cunningham, because obviously Rand Carthon lasted 2 years. Shelf life is very short in Tennessee, and I'm telling you, I just don't understand why any of these guys would even want this job. I don't even know. Why would they want to come here and be number 2, supposedly, to Chad Brinker? Like, how is this a vertical move up the ladder? To go to Tennessee, where you already know you're on limited time, where you already know you've got like a year to make this team a playoff team, or else you're out. But maybe, hey, listen, we're all saying how bad we feel for Rand Carthon. Don't feel bad for Rand Carthon. He's going to sit at home and do nothing and get paid. Just like John Robinson has been sitting at home doing nothing and getting paid by the Tennessee Titans. Just like Mike Vrabel has been, not sitting at home, he's been an assistant coach for the Browns, but he's still getting paid by the Tennessee Titans. Like, these dudes are still getting paid. So maybe Nashville is the place to go. Because worst case scenario, you get fired after a year or two, and then you just get to go sit at home and collect a paycheck for the next few years. That seems like a pretty good gig to me. That seems like a pretty good gig. I want to go off of something that Titan South just said in the chat, because it's a good segue to just briefly what I was going to say next. Titan South said Brinker has a good reputation, and that is true. Now, I want to say this. I do not dislike Chad Brinker. I am not opposed to Chad Brinker running the show, if that's even what he's doing. I'm not opposed to that. Listen, he has a good resume. Anybody that's been associated with the Packers, I mean, Green Bay is one of the better organizations in the league. So, yeah, that's great. And I think Chad Brinker could do a good job if he were to be the actual GM. I don't know what he's been doing. I don't know what his job description's been or what it's going to be. I just don't even know. But I just want to say, regardless of how I feel about Brinker, and it's not that I think Brinker's not going to do a good job if he is the one having the final say. It's not that I think he's going to do a bad job, but there's no denying. There's no denying. This just looks awful for the Tennessee Titans. It looks awful. I mean, they said it on NFL Live. I watched the clip yesterday. They described the Titans as erratic and impatient. And that's putting it lightly. It just has the look. I mean, when you're firing a GM or a head coach every year, it just looks erratic. It looks impatient. You're firing someone every year. And every year you say the same thing about the person that you fire. Well, they weren't willing to do this, or they weren't willing to do that, or they weren't collaborative enough, or what. And it's just like, okay, we're just moving the goalpost. We're moving the goalpost. We fired John Robinson in 2022. And when we did that, we said, well, he was hard-headed and stubborn and wanted to do things his own way and made some awful decisions trading AJ, which, by the way, are we really going to act like, I mean, listen, John Robinson deserved to be fired for that, but he wasn't the only one in the room where it happened. Hamilton reference, the room where it happened, if anybody gets that. He wasn't the only one in the room where it happened. Amy Adams Strunk was in that room. She's the owner of the team. Let's not act like she's innocent in that terrible A.J. Brown trade. You mean tell me she couldn't have stepped up and said, hey, this is stupid, don't do it, I'll fire you right now. Like, hey, it was John Robinson deserved to be fired for it, but let's not act like he was just acting alone. Now, other than the AJ trade, 3 years of terrible drafts are a part of the reason why we're in the position we're in now, John Robinson. So, but you fire John Robinson in 22. Then a year, and when you fire John Robinson, it's like, okay, we're going with Mike Vrabel is the future. Mike Vrabel's going to be the future. He's going to run this organization. He's going to be the one. He's going to be the poster boy for the Tennessee Titans. Then a year later, you fire Vrabel, and you say, well, he wasn't collaborative enough. Hunting together is not the same as hunting at the same time. And we're going to work together. We're going to build an environment where everybody has input and we're a team and we get along. The Vrabel's out. And again, I still don't think Mike Vrabel would have ever won a Super Bowl for the Tennessee Titans, but my goodness, he sure looks like he was right now. Regardless of how things turn out in the end, at this moment, Mike Vrabel looks like a prophet. He said Rand Carthon wasn't ready. That's why he didn't want him to hire him in the first place. They hired him anyway. Then they chose Rand over him, and now they fired Rand a year later. So Vrabel does kind of look like a prophet at this point. But we're contradicting ourselves. We blamed it all on J-Rob, and then we fired him. Then we blamed it all on Vrabel, then we fired him. Now we're blaming it all on Rand, and then we're going to fire him. And then Brian Callahan, I mean, God bless the guy. Does it not seem like a foregone conclusion that Brian Callahan's going to be fired within the next year? Does it not just feel like a foregone conclusion that Callahan has got maybe a year left and then he's out too? Like, if I'm him, I'm gathering my family together and saying, hey, don't get used to Nashville. We're probably going to be fired within the next year. Like, it has that feel. It has that feel of, we just blamed everything on Rand Carthon and kicked him out. The next year we'll need another scapegoat, and that'll be Callahan. And then by the next year, whenever we get a new head coach, whoever that's going to be, they come in, and then things don't get any better. So then we got to let Brinker go and then elevate whoever they're about to hire as GM to president, so that we got to go fire or hire another GM. And then by the next year, the coach isn't doing a good job, so we fire the coach. I mean, that's what it feels like. If that's what you predict to happen for the Tennessee Titans over the next few years, I can't even argue with you, because that's the precedent they've set. Somebody gets fired every year. There's a new scapegoat every year. We move the goalpost every year. I mean, what did they say the other day when they fired Rand? They were like, "Oh, the job description has changed from what it was when we hired Rand." It's like it was only 2 years ago. How have we changed that much in 2 years? Ugh. And listen, if they had fired everybody, if they had just cleaned house, I wouldn't even be complaining. Okay? If she had fired Rand and Brian Callahan, then I would have said, you know what? I get it. We were 3-14. We were horrible. Worst team in the league on a year where there were a lot of nominees for that. I get it. But instead, she just fired one guy. She fired one guy and kept Callahan to indicate that guy, Rand Carthon, he's the main reason we were so bad. It's like, no, if you're gonna do it all the way. Do not just fire one guy. If you're going to clean house, clean house. Don't halfway clean house. Do you see what the Raiders did? They cleaned house because the guy who's kind of running that show now, Tom Brady, said, I don't want to force a GM and a head coach to have to get along. I want to bring two guys in at the same time. Two people in at the same time who can run this show together and already, be on the same page without having to get to know each other and all of that stuff. That's what Tom Brady said, but what does he know? Right? What does he know? Not as much as Amy Adams Strunk, apparently. I don't know. Last thing I want to say before I get into playoff picks of the 32-1, the final 32-1 power rankings of the year, I just want to talk briefly about Mike Vrabel. A lot of people are having a field day with the Titans fired Mike Vrabel, and now look at him. Mike Vrabel was the reason they were good. Let me tell you something. More important than any coach, than any GM, when you have good players, that's what makes your team good. When I look back on that Vrabel era of the Titans, I'm not saying Vrabel's not a good coach. I believe he is. I believe he deserves to be hired somewhere, and he will be. He's got interviews every day. But do you not think Derrick Henry had anything to do with how good the Titans were? I mean, have you been watching the guy in Baltimore this year? He almost had 2,000 yards again. Okay? Like, do you not think A.J. Brown might have had something to do with it? Like, come on. Look at what he's been doing in Philadelphia. When you have those guys on the roster and probably the best version of Ryan Tannehill we've ever seen with a much better offensive line, the team was better. And that was a roster, by the way, that Vrabel mostly inherited when he took the job. So I'm still not buying the whole Vrabel was the one making the Titans good. It's like, are you kidding me? Look at who we had. Derek and AJ and Big Jeff, his first few years, and that really solid offensive line with Ben Jones and Taylor Lewan and Roger Saffold and all of them. Like, that was a good roster. And I guess that falls more on the GM, I guess. But I'm just still not buying the whole if they'd have kept Vrabel, they'd be better. We'd be like 2 games better, maybe. We wouldn't be quite as embarrassing, but we wouldn't be winning. We wouldn't be in the playoffs right now. Everybody's all about Vrabel. They're excited about him. And here's the thing. Whether you believe he should have been fired or not, whether you believe that he was, the coach of the future or not, it's a bad look right now. I'm just going to tell you. To see where the Titans are, Vrabel's going to be hired somewhere within probably the next couple of weeks, and they're going to probably going to be New England, and the media is going to just fall all over themselves to talk about how great it is. And, and then there's going to be the Titans hiring their third GM in 3 years, and, it's not going to be exactly, not going to be a good look for the Titans. But, the one thing I will say, if I'm going to be positive, which is hard to do right now, okay? If you start winning, You start figuring out how to win games, nobody's going to care who the GM is, right? I mean, winning truly cures everything. Everything. It doesn't matter. I said this the other day on X, and I will repeat it here. I don't care. If the Titans start winning, I don't care how chaotic the front office is. I don't care how dysfunctional it is. I don't care if Chad Brinker's calling the shots or the new GM's calling the shots or if Amy's calling the shots or if nobody's calling the shots and they're all just guessing as they go along. I don't care how chaotic it gets. If you start winning, that's all I care about. I don't care. I don't care if you fire people every year. If we're winning, I will accept it. I don't care if we are setting the building on fire at the end of every season and just telling every employee to get out and we're starting over. I don't care. As long as we're winning, I won't care. So if you draft Cam Ward, if you draft Shedeur Sanders, and they come in and start playing well, and they start creating some excitement and some buzz and start winning some games, I will forget any of this ever happened. I will forget this ever happened. I won't even be thinking about Chad Brinker or Amy Adams Strunk because I'll be so happy that we're winning. So if Titans ownership and Titans management, if they want people to get off their backs and stop giving them such a hard time, start winning. Start winning. Even if I don't agree with your business practices, I will put it to the side. If you will just start winning. This is the final 32-1 power rankings of the season. And let me tell you what I've done. This is going to be quite an interesting thing. I'm going to show you my current 32-1. And then off to the side, I'm going to show you what my 32-1 was, power rankings were in week 1. I'm going to put them side by side and compare. I'm going to show you what it currently is, and then I'm going to show you what it was going into week 1 before anybody had even played a game yet. Let's just see how off I was. Starting with the bottom 3. So this is my current bottom 3 at the end of the year. Tennessee Titans dead last. I'm not even just showing my bias and how unhappy I am with the Titans. I literally think they're the worst team in the league. The Browns are at 31. They could give the Titans a run for their money. They're atrocious. And the Giants, who are also atrocious. And what a coincidence. These are the top 3 picks in the draft. The Giants are 3rd. The Browns are 2nd. Titans are 1st. They're the worst 3 teams in the league, so that's where they should be. Now let's look at my bottom 3 from week 1. Going into week 1, at 32, I had the Patriots, which is not too far-fetched. I mean, they finished, 4-13, so they're one of the worst teams in the league. I had the Giants at 31 going into week 1, so I was about right. I was in the ballpark on them. I mean, I got them at 30 at the end, had them at 31 at the start. And then at 30, I had the Carolina Panthers, which the Panthers are not at all one of the 3 worst teams in the league, but they did finish the season 4-13. So, I mean, it's like they're in the ballpark of that. So that's nothing offensive here with this bottom 3 that I had. Now, let's go to the 20s. And at first, of course, we're going to see my current 20s. At 29, the Raiders, awful. At 28, the Patriots, awful. At 27, the Jaguars, awful. At 26, the Saints, who I don't even think get enough credit for how bad they were this year. The Jets, disaster at 25. At 24, the Chicago Bears, who at least got a win over the Packers in Week 18. That's a good little way for them to end the season and hopefully carry some momentum over. Finally beating the Packers. 23, the Indianapolis Colts. Mid as mid can be. Number 22, the Dallas Cowboys. Yikes. Number 21, the Carolina Panthers. Even though they're 4-13, they move up the list because they seem to be headed in the right direction. At number 20, the San Francisco 49ers, who in my opinion are among the biggest disappointments in the league. Now, let's look at my week 1. Back in week 1, these were my 20s. At 29, I had the Saints. Not offensive. At 28, I had the Denver Broncos. Uh-oh, they're in the playoffs. They went 10-7. I had them as one of the worst teams in the league. Not correct. At 27, I had the Raiders. So, that's about right, or in the ballpark again. At number 26, I had the Arizona Cardinals. They're a little better than I thought. Okay, they went 8-9, but still a disappointing season for them, but they're not like among the worst or anything. At 25, I had the Pittsburgh Steelers back in week 1. Playoff team. I think they're going to be one and done, but playoff team. At 24, I had the Minnesota Vikings. Oh boy. You remember what the narrative was about the Vikings? Oh, it's a shame they don't have a good quarterback. It's a shame they're going to have to go with Sam Darnold. It's just they're not going to be able to compete with the Bears and the Packers and the Lions. Well, 14-3? At 23, I had the Washington Commanders. So we're on a roll here with teams that were very good and made the playoffs that I thought weren't going to be very good. 22, I had the Seattle Seahawks. They were probably significantly better than I thought they were going to be, even though they didn't make the playoffs. I think Mike McDonald had a good first year there. At 21, I had the Indianapolis Colts, and I ended them at 23, so I was kind of in the ballpark. At 20, I had the Tennessee Titans. Maybe that was just my inner fan coming out hoping, but I had the Titans at 20, and that was just ranking them way too high. Now, my current in the teens here, 19 currently, these are current. I have the Cardinals at 19, like I said, disappointing season. I have the Falcons at 18, very disappointing season for them. I have the Dolphins at 17. They were still in the playoff hunt late, but what a disappointing end of the year. At 16, I've got the Steelers, even though they're a playoff team. I mean, they've lost 4 in a row. At 15, I've got the Houston Texans, who, again, are in the playoffs, but I feel like there are teams who didn't make the playoffs who would beat them right now, such as number 14, the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks went 10-7. I think they would beat the Texans or the Steelers right now. At number 13, I've got the Cincinnati Bengals, the best team not to make the playoffs maybe that I've ever seen. At number 12, the Denver Broncos, who obviously, what a year for them. And at number 11, I've got the LA Rams. Rams are winning ugly. They did lose in week 18. They were playing their backups. They've been winning ugly, so I dropped them out of the top 10. Now let's look at my rankings from week 1. At 19, I had the Jaguars. I was way too kind to them. Number 18, I had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Was not nice enough to them. I had the LA Chargers at 17. Didn't give them enough credit. I really didn't think they would be that good this year. At number 16, I had the Cleveland Browns. Boy, they underachieved. At 15, I had the Chicago Bears, had too much hope in them. At 14, I had the Dallas Cowboys, had way too much hope in them. At number 13, I had the New York Jets, had too much hope in them. At number 12, I had the Atlanta Falcons, too much hope in them. At number 11, I had the Buffalo Bills, not nearly enough hope in them. Now let's get to the top 10. There's my current top 10. As you can see, number 10, currently I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they could upset somebody in the playoffs, like Baker, like Mike Evans. Thought they've been really good. At number 9, I've got the LA Chargers. I don't think they're a Super Bowl threat, but they can win ugly. I still think they could upset somebody. At number 8, I've got the Washington Commanders. Exciting young quarterback. Really fun team. Number 7, I got the Green Bay Packers. They lost this week, week 18. They were playing backups. I think the Packers, they're not on the level of some of these other NFC teams, but they're a tier below. At number 6, I got the Minnesota Vikings. They took one on the chin to the Detroit Lions for the division, for the number 1 seed, and now they've got to go on the road and play Wild Card Weekend while Detroit gets to sit at home. Number 5, the Kansas City Chiefs. They got killed in week 18, but they played none of their starters. Kansas City deserves all the respect you can give them because they'll find a way somehow. Wouldn't surprise me if they won the whole thing. Number 4, the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar, Derrick Henry, going to be dangerous in the playoffs. Number 3, the Philadelphia Eagles, who are better than I thought they were going to be by far. I think they're a Super Bowl threat. Number 2, the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, they're great. And at number 1, the Detroit Lions are back at number 1. I felt like they needed to go back to 1 because they won a meaningful game in Week 18, and they won by a lot. It's going to be tough to stop them. These were my top 10 going into Week 1. At number 10, I had the Miami Dolphins. Oh, boy. And I'll tell you what, I remember I had the Miami Dolphins as the number 1 seed in the AFC. I thought they were going to shock everybody. I was wrong. Number 9, I had the Houston Texans. They were supposed to be the next big thing. They're in the playoffs, but by default. Number 8, I had the Green Bay Packers, so I was in the ballpark with them. Number 7, I had the Philadelphia Eagles. They're a little bit. I thought they were going to be a playoff team, but they're a Super Bowl contender. Number 6, I had the Baltimore Ravens. Even though I ranked them high, they're still better than I thought. Number 5, I had the Rams. A little too kind to them, but not offensive. Number 4, I had the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm still not sorry for this one. Yes, I had them too high. I thought the Bengals were going to go to the Super Bowl this year, but I'm not going to apologize for it because on paper they should have been a threat with Burrow and Chase and Higgins, but for whatever reason, they just had a stretch where they couldn't figure out how to win. At number 3, going into the season, I had the Detroit Lions, so I always had them up toward the top. At number 2, I had the Kansas City Chiefs back in week 1. And at number 1, I had the San Francisco 49ers, who were supposed to be Super Bowl contenders in the NFC. Obviously, like I said earlier, one of the more disappointing seasons of the NFL with the 49ers there. So, I just got to say, I don't know what your obsession is with T-Rack in the chat, but I mean, it's just every day you're talking about this guy. T-Rack, the mascot for the Titans. All right, let's make some picks for the playoffs. Let me know in the chat who you picked to win these games. The first game of the weekend tomorrow is the Chargers and the Texans in Houston. I have no hesitation in picking the Chargers. I think the Chargers, at this point, I trust Justin Herbert a heck of a lot more than I trust C.J. Stroud. Both teams have playoff experience. The only time we've seen Justin Herbert in the playoffs was when they had a total meltdown against the Jaguars. Houston obviously got a win over Cleveland last year before getting stomped by Baltimore. I'm going with the Chargers, though. I just think I trust Harbaugh more than I trust DeMeco Ryans. I think the Chargers are just a better team. Then, also tomorrow, how about an AFC North battle? The Steelers and the Ravens. Absolutely picking the Ravens in this one. I mean, would really be shocking if the Steelers go in there and beat them. Yeah, Ravens are much better than the Steelers. Broncos, Bills on Sunday. Bills. I mean, God bless the Broncos. What a season for them, but it's a lot to ask of Bo Nix to go into Buffalo in his first playoff game ever and win. If he does that way, I mean, give him the Rookie of the Year if he does that. But I got the Bills. I got the Bills winning this one. Also on Sunday, the Packers and the Eagles. This is an interesting one. In Philly, I'm going with the Eagles. I just don't buy the Packers. I think they're a good team, but I don't think they're good enough to beat the Eagles. I don't think they're good enough to beat the Lions. I don't even think they're good enough to beat the Vikings when the Vikings are on. So I think the Packers are the 4th best, and I think the Commanders may even be better than them. I got the Eagles winning this one. Commanders Bucks, this could be a fun one. I could see Commanders Bucks. I could see that being a fun game. In Tampa Bay, a lot of people are going to pick the Commanders. I'm going to go with the Buccaneers. I think that Jaden Daniels has been sensational, but I mean, this is, again, it's not as tough of an environment as Bo Nix is going to have to go into, but on the road in the playoffs, he's still a rookie. They're still a young team. They're on the rise. I think the Bucks have more experience. Obviously, Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield alone, but I mean, the Bucks are a much more a veteran team. I think the Bucks will get the win here. I'm going with the Bucks over the Commanders, even though it would be cool to see the Commanders get a win. And then the last game is on Monday, the Vikings and the Rams. That game's going to be played in Arizona because of the fires in California. And of course, I'm sending my prayers and love to everybody there. Hope you're staying safe. If anybody watches from California, what a terrible thing going on there. I'm gonna go with the Rams. I'm gonna go with the Rams. I'm sorry. I know the Vikings are 14-3 and they've mostly looked great this season. I just can't buy in, man. I can't buy into Sam Darnold and the Vikings. I trust, even though the Vikings on paper are a much better team than the Rams, I just trust Matthew Stafford more than Sam Darnold. The Rams have won a Super Bowl with a lot of these same guys. They've got more experience. I'm going with the Rams. I also feel like there may be, and maybe this will be the case with the Chargers as well, with everything that's going on in LA with the fires. You know, we see a lot where that kind of inspires a team to go win for their city when their city's going through a really tough time like LA is. So maybe that'll, this game was supposed to be played in LA. So maybe that will cause the Rams to kind of play with a little extra passion in this game. That's going to do it for me. I will be back on Monday to talk about whatever new is happening with the Titans, to recap the wild card weekend. And I'm gonna go look at the snow again. I appreciate everybody for hanging out today. Really enjoyed today's episode. Really enjoyed seeing you guys in the chat and what all nonsense you're talking about there, especially T-Rack, the mascot. Appreciate you guys. See ya Monday. Have a good weekend. God bless you, everybody. Tighten up. Bye.